Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hello. Welcome back, some of you. We haven't seen in a little while. Thanks for being here. So I think that we have about an hour, and I'm going to talk for a while in here, and we can look at this art and do some questions. Then I think Adam might come in and talk a little bit if he gets back from his outdoor project. And then I think Grace is going to take us down to School Art Spectacular. So I am going to talk about Shelley Reed. Shelley Reed is an artist that Adam and I have been looking at for a long time. And we're really, really excited that we're able to get this giant mural and these additional pieces for this summer. Shelley was born in 1958 in New York. She lives in the Boston area. She has work in the permanent collection of the Boston Museum of Fine Arts, Wellington Management Company, Fidelity Investment, Hallmark Collection, the Bank of Boston, the Rose Art Museum, DeCordova Museum and Sculpture Park, among others. She is a really interesting artist in a bunch of ways, and I am going to talk about that. First, I'm going to read a few quotes that she's written about her work. One of the things that I think is really interesting is this work sort of looks really contemporary, but it also looks kind of old, right? Or it looks like it's referencing some older works. If you've been around in the museum a little bit, we have some pieces in the Widener gallery that I'm going to talk about that are related to this work for us. So one of the things that she says about her work is that in the 1700s and 1800s, painters were not just using animals as decorative elements, but were interested in the overlap between the wild and the domestic, and exploring where domesticity intersects and overlaps with our wild side. What she's doing is I'm reintroducing that conversation and questioning whether, after 300 years, we've learned how to better master our wild side. So what she's doing in her work is using reference material from old works of art and basically collaging it. She's painting, using parts of a lot of older masterworks and creating a new story. And you know, sometimes she's using a specific work, like these three behind you, and sometimes, as in this 47-foot long mural, she is referencing, I actually don't know how many works she's referencing in here. So if you picked anything in this mural, it is a reference from another masterwork. So what she's doing is putting these all together and creating a new story. And she's interested in us knowing that she's using history, but she's not necessarily interested in us knowing exactly what pieces are for us to get a good contemporary story out of this. So one of the things that she talks about we'll just look at this mural for a little while, and I'm going to read a quote about this mural. So this mural is called In Dubious Battle. And she says, the title comes from a line in John Milton's poem, Paradise Lost. In Dubious Battle references a struggle between God and Satan, but in a broader and secular sense, it might also reference the battles we're involved in with ourselves as beings trying to live ethically, but also prey to our own animal instincts. Which is pretty big. So, as you're thinking about this piece, one of the things she talks about is so it's 7 feet tall, 47 feet long, partly she wants you to read it from left to right, and she wants us to think about that idea of the domestic and the wild. And if you just scan, you can see that the left side is a little more calm, there's more architecture in it, and as you move along to the right side, things get a little stranger and a little bit more fierce, and the fighting at the end here gets really pretty crazy. So, you know, as you're kind of absorbing it, those are some of the things to think about. Let's see, another thing that I'm going to read another quote about this also. So the other thing that we see, right, is that everything in this gallery is in black and white. Do you guys have any ideas about why she might want to do that? Or what it does for you to see this work in black and white? So what she says is that black and white allows me to focus on the psychological aspect, the gaze, the violence, the interpersonal dances. If there were bright red blood spurting over here in all directions, while you're looking at the lion being bitten by dogs in this piece would be one kind of experience, right? We would have like a reaction to red blood. So she says without the color, you're able to look more closely and maybe be surprised by the story being told. So she's trying to remove some of that information so that we're really looking at her composition and her story that she's telling us. Let's see. Anything you want to add, Adam? I'm going to go talk a little bit about these pieces.
No, do that. Yeah. Talk about
that. So, does this look familiar to anybody?
Yes. It's the
Where from?
Red deer from the...
From the
Landseer.
Landseer painting.
Fraser, right? Fraser?
Landseer.
Oh, Landseer.
Yeah. So, in the Widener Gallery, we have some of our older European works, and one of them is a really big, very dramatic sort of mountain scene with some red deer in it by a painter named Landseer. And what she's doing is taking this little detail. He painted a lot of paintings with those deer in them. So she's taking one of the Landseer deer and creating a portrait of it to highlight this animal. And she's also trying to draw on our cultural knowledge. This deer was used, or has been used, in advertising. So if anybody drinks scotch,
Glenfiddich.
Exactly. So this was used on the logo of the Glenfiddich scotch, and it also this deer was used for the Hartford insurance company. So she's trying to bring us, trying to think about contemporary culture and how we're using animals in advertising, and also creating a portrait of this animal. So we have a tiny little image here from our Landseer painting. And then another thing I'd like to talk about a little bit is there are a few paintings in the Widener Gallery where the artists maybe one painting in particular, but one painting in particular, the Jericho painting of the two lions that are in a very sort of idyllic forest or area. What Jericho did in that painting was go to the Louvre and study those lions that were in a Rubens painting. And he put them there, actually, hauling Marie de Medici during her coronation. But what he's doing is using another artist's work and putting it in a different context and studying from it. So it's a similar thing that she's doing here.
Bronwyn,
yeah.
I love telling some people if I talk about that painting, I love to tell people the story Jericho's making these lions free, rather than being hooked up to a chariot.
Very good.
However, if you see some other lion paintings in Africa by later paintings, they look so stylized.
Right. But that is a really good segue from that gallery to this, because what you're saying is that he's making those lions look free when really they were, domesticated in the Rubens painting, and she's talking about that too, like free and wild and fierce and tame and that sort of thing. So that's really good. This little grouping is really interesting because she calls it predator and prey. What she's trying to highlight is that we might have assumptions about that normally a swan is prey of a bigger animal, or that maybe this wolf is a predator. But what she's doing is highlighting little sections of historic paintings where these animals are actually on the opposite of what we think they are. So Carrie has made this amazing interactive that's on the table, and it shows the original painting. So in the original painting of this, is it dogs? There's some.
Oh, it's a trap. His leg is caught in a trap.
So the wolf is caught in a trap, and in this painting, the swan is in a really, really fierce predator type position. So what she's trying to do is make us think a little bit about how we classify animals as predator and prey.
Wolf Caught in a Trap by Jean-Baptiste Audrey.
Very nice.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, really, those things are quite important.
Oh, I think that's going to be
Oh, Grace has the touch. Everybody who wants to see how to use these, let Grace show you.
You got to get some different fingerprints, man.
It must be reading fingerprints.
No, it seems like it's working. Yeah.
So these three paintings actually are earlier works than this big piece behind you, where what she's doing is actually, in those two pieces, she has actually taken works by Audrey and by, can't remember, it's on the interactive. Snyder's. This comes from a couple of different artists, but there's a really great, so you guys come back and listen to the little sections about all of these on these interactives, because her voice, she's very clear, she's really good at talking about her work and talking about all of this. So what she's really interested in here is this is a pretty good rendition of a couple of really, classic pieces, and she is really interested in it's called Bird Concert. And what she really enjoys about this piece is that all of the smallest, or one of the smallest, wisest animals, the owl, is the conductor, but really it's just this giant mess cacophony that's going on. So she's really interested in that idea of that painting. These two paintings, this piece, Caught in a Net after Snyder's, she talks really well about this. What she's doing is taking a painting and working through it in black and white, but she's cut off part of the original painting that has a mouse, and this possibly was the Aesop's Fables, the Lion and the Mouse. So she's highlighting that there is a lion caught in a net, but she's not showing you the cause. And then this last piece in here is Attacked by Hounds after Audrey, and it's a pretty good interpretation in black and white of an Audrey painting. And what's really interesting for us is that Audrey is a really classic French painter of this type of scene, and this is a really, and in our wildest dreams we would love to have an Audrey in the collection, but this is a really amazing way to talk about Audrey and Audrey's influence on animal art from a contemporary voice. Let's see. What else?
I would just say that part that's a really nice tie-in with fight or flight. So you've got all those animals in motion over there, and not necessarily as historic as this is referencing, but this ties in really well because all of these animals are doing all this crazy stuff. So they really do work very well together, I would say. And then I think that the ties to the Widener Gallery and the European art that's in there are really interesting as well.
The DeVos has a lot of things in common with this.
Yes.
With this, the fierce and the tame. And
What's the horse?
I
that because he's just so big and highlighted.
Well,
Let's see.
There's two pieces of art.
See?
right, and what,
I know,
what
I
famous piece of art do we have that has a horse? That was out in 2 years ago. So George Stubbs was a great horse painter. And we have a really great engraving of a lion attacking a horse that has been out recently. And then that is an interesting lens here. So anyway, the horse was definitely a part of these, especially the hunting scenes that a lot of these came out of. The dogs, the horse. You've got this still life in the middle that's actually, after a hunt. So that kind of takes this whole progression from domestic through the hunting into the total chaos of this scene over here.
That's very fun.
Was this work created for a museum?
No, we saw it at a gallery sent us a flyer about it, and we got really interested. And then a gallery in New York. It went to a museum in South Carolina as an exhibit. This and a couple other pieces. And so as it was down there, we started talking to the artist to see if we could get it to come here.
And when was it completed?
2013.
So it was very recent.
Oh, I'm just getting a whole bunch more fun ties into our permanent collection. So in the JKM gallery, we have that whole section that is called Trophies of the Hunt, which is about our relationship with animals as hunting and food, and this ties into that section really well, with the still lives of the birds hanging and the fish still life. This relates really well to that section of JKM.
Did you guys just get really lucky the way it fits, or I mean, the panels down here are big and they're littler down there?
No.
We did a lot of math.
We did a lot of measuring and we did a lot of figuring this out so that we knew it would work, because it's important to Shelley Reed that these all hang together. So you have to have a 47-foot space, but we don't have that in one wall. So we drew it out, figured out that it would work to do this kind of surround sound, or if you were watching movies in the 50s and 60s, you could say it was more like CinemaScope or something.
Do you think those are smaller?
The
The
panels,
panels are
smaller,
smaller.
skinnier.
But that wasn't really a part of it. So
Same height.
no, there wasn't even enough room to
Not
do
as
it. If
wide.
they had fit perfectly on that wall and on this wall, that's still not 47 feet. But we figured if we did the diagonals, that it would work.
That worked out well.
And one of the most impressive things about this that you don't have in anything else in the museum is when you're standing right here, this fills your entire field of vision. So it is more encompassing, that's kind of what a mural does, than anything else that we have. So you can really get into the scene because they're such big panels, such big animals, and it takes up so much of your visual field. It's encompassing in a really interesting way.
What can you say about the structure there? I just looked at that screen and there's no reference for that. Looks like Zion or something. Do you have any?
You mean that arc? Oh, right.
So
So I see what you mean.
So in this interactive, Carrie concentrated on the animals, but when Shelley's here,
Yeah.
you can ask her what that reference is. So Shelley would be able to tell you that this flower came out of such and such a painting, and this bowl, and that vase, and that anchor, or pickaxe, whatever it is.
I mean, that looks like Salvador Dali to me, but I'm
Right, it
guessing
gets a little
Yeah.
surreal.
Yes.
It looks like a tree.
It's like a natural arch, and then those rocks. I'm sure she would be happy to tell us where those came from.
Or as Carrie pointed out, we can go through the source document.
Yeah. And the cool thing is that she purposely made it so it didn't match up exactly in certain places. So she doesn't want, she wants you to think of it as different panels in different scenes, and she kind of brings that to your attention by not matching it up exactly in
And
every place.
she also feels pretty strongly that we understand that these came from historical references, but that we not dwell just on that.
Right.
She really, really wants us to bring our own story to this. So we can bring our own story that, yes, these came from history, but she's making a contemporary, like a contemporary comment. As opposed to like, well, that came from that, which came from that, which came from that, which came from that, because then we could just go into a crazy rabbit hole. That isn't her point.
And the other thing that I realized last night, if you read the Ai Weiwei catalog that we have, he talks a lot about appropriating objects, and those zodiac heads that are out there are his version of a previous generation's artwork. And so there's a lot of this in the contemporary world of appropriating things from the past and forming it into your own new work of art.
But something like this one here, where it's almost identical but black and white, and there's no issue with that. You can, I mean, it's not like music where you know,
A certain percentage has to be changed for it not to be, is that what you're referencing? Sometimes
Well, I
it's
just
like-
want
effects and everything.
Yeah, and then as well as not copyrights.
There are a lot of contemporary lawsuits like that where one artist is appropriating another contemporary artist's work, and there are a lot of things like that, but basically if you, in this case, Udry can't sue Shelley Reed because he's,
Well, it's out of copyright.
and it's out of
by 300
copyright, but
years.
also the law is that if you change something enough, then you can use it, and without getting into a problem like that. So it would be, there's probably a really nice audio clip that I'm not remembering about this piece where she talks about why this piece, why Udry and that sort of thing. You might even have it off the top of your head.
Well, yeah, she does speak about this work, not specifically to that point, but a lot of the titles of her paintings also seem to reference, like, isn't this one
They all reference the artist.
Bird Concert after Earlham, or
Yeah.
Attacked by Hounds after Udry. So she's, you know, being very transparent about the fact that
Yeah.
she's appropriating the imagery.
That she's trying to bring this, you know, these ideas from this period of time into our current conversation.
So, I mean, that's kind of what I was wondering when I was looking at this too, is are there ethical issues with appropriating other people's ideas and using them in your own work of art? Or
People have been doing it for
they've been doing that for
a
a long
long
time?
time. But this is supposed to make you think about the history and the whole span of time, and she's making it contemporary by making it big, black and white. She's, you know, referencing the artist and asking you to think about what relevance this might have in today's world. And it's not a historic painting in a, you know, the French section of the galleries. It's in our contemporary section, and you know, that's an interesting conversation starter, I would say.
So, Gigi, there is forgery, and there is so there are lots of ethical issues about forgery and painting a Van Gogh and trying to sell it as Van Gogh, but that's not her conversation. Her conversation is, I want to talk about history. I want to talk about art history. I want to talk about how this makes us feel in contemporary art conversation.
And I think any artist would acknowledge that they are strongly influenced by other artists. That's how art develops, is you see something like with the Coon and his horizontal bands, you know, you get that in your subconscious.
Yeah.
And then, but your piece is probably referencing that,
Yeah.
but in your own unique, original way. So I think when you say it's after somebody, you are really acknowledging that they have something significant to say, but there's a fresh way of doing it. Different.
I can see how you could get people to look at one of these and just, before you told them anything about it, you start talking about a story in connection with these. I'm mind-boggled by this one. Okay, so you just take this right here. You know, how is somebody supposed to see a story in there? There's just so much going on
this is a great beginning with a story, right? You got things starting to go a little bit haywire, right? It's not completely calm and peaceful. There's this fire that's happening. Maybe the horse is a little bit excited. So it's not a completely peaceful scene.
Monkey's
so
playing the violin.
Right.
The elevator about
And then it kind of
sitting over here.
sets you up for what's to come.
So in the whichever period she got these from, all of these things also meant things. So that is really interesting. Also, so like a bowl of nice fresh peaches means something different than a bowl of rotten peaches, or that sort of thing. So, and I don't know all of those references, but we could find them. Like, what do monkeys symbolize in this, in that period that she's referencing? What does, a peacock, I think, from what I'm remembering from what she talked about, that one is a symbol of vanity. So there's all of these little things they meant something. The flower, that kind of flower probably meant something also. So.
But definitely listen to the audio stuff, because she talks about a lot of this stuff.
So where is the audio?
It's on the interactive.
Yeah, so the audio will come through on headphones. We're still doing a little bit of very last minute programming. So they're not, this one isn't completely ready with audio yet, but the audio works great on this one right here. Just pop those headphones on, and each inset here you can touch to hear a different audio clip from the artist speaking about that piece specifically, or about a theme that is well illustrated by that piece. So yes, please come back and enjoy the interactive. There's a lot of content to immerse yourself in.
Thank you for putting that together.
Yeah, well done.
Thank you to Shelley Reed. She made it all possible. She shared incredible amounts of her source imagery, and that was like scratching the surface of what she works with.
And she's coming.
And she's coming here. Grace is putting together a fabulous program that features Shelley Reed and another contemporary artist, Rachel Stutzman, whose work will be on exhibit. So it's wonderful. You can ask her all of these questions in person.
I'm not going to ask her questions to copy another art.
Yeah, no. That's why I was asking you.
Should we do more, like let people hear one of the audio clips, or what?
Well, we could do that. I tried to secure all the headphones so that they wouldn't get pulled out. But yeah, I mean, do people want to hear a sample of the audio clips? Because we could make that happen right now, or it's something we could folks can explore on their own too.
Sure.
Did you hear one? Okay, great. So I'm gonna pump that really. All right, so which of the works in this exhibit would folks like to hear an audio clip about? Or, whichever.
Panel one.
Panel one. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah.
It was a blast. And thank you. I should also say thank you to the Columbia Museum of Art for sharing these audio clips with us. We didn't record them themselves, and they were very generous to let us select from the list and kind of curate this whole interactive. So that was really a blast. So we can hear Shelley speaking about panel one of In Dubious Battle here.
In my work, I'm not really referencing specific political situations that are happening currently. I'm trying to address a larger underlying sense of the inevitability of our behavior, which often has political ramifications. So in thinking of In Dubious Battle, on the left-hand side, we started a relatively pastoral setting where nothing too violent is happening. But there's a dog looking up at birds, looking off at deer. There's a real sense of what might that dog do if it didn't get that bird. And as we move to the right of the painting, we get into a tremendous tussle of animals. They're all really kind of the same, but slightly different species. They're different leopards and lions, tiger, who can just not get along.
So that's just a little sample of the type of audio that you'll hear. Some reference the actual narrative of the specific panel or work being shown. Some speak a little more to just her practice as an artist. So it's fabulous to hear her voice. And again, as we mentioned, we'll get to hear her voice in real life on June 23rd at the Chit Chat program, as well as on June 24th at a special volunteer training with Shelley Reed and Rachel Sussman. So mark your calendars, you're not going to want to miss those. So let's see, I think we'll just give you a quick overview. You know, you've seen this interactive. This is our kind of high-tech interpretive element. And then over here on the low-tech table, we have a couple of items that really stress the viewer's autonomy in crafting a narrative using Shelley Reed's work, as well as some deeper looking at elements of the works themselves, especially, you know, how she connects the panels. So we've done that through a nice book that Grace has put together that allows you to construct a conversation between some of the characters in the work, as well as this beautiful puzzle that Jane work to put together. So a lot to do in this exhibit, a lot of really fun ways to engage with this narrative, and hopefully you'll all come back and get some time to play with the puzzle, craft a conversation, and spend some time with the interactive. Yeah, does anyone else have anything to add?
Just this is a lot of information that we've talked about here, but all of the stuff that we have talked about is actually in this room. So the quotes that I read are on the intro panel there, so if you're like, what did Bronwyn say about black and white, or what? Adam wrote that great panel, and then a lot of the other things I was talking about are from the quotes in the interactive. So the information is not a secret, it's here for you to use when you're with people in the gallery.
So Bronwyn, the puzzle, or Jane puzzle, can you explain a little bit about the puzzle?
Yes. So the puzzle, we commissioned a woman on Etsy who made it for us. We sent her the images. She makes custom puzzles. It's harder than we'd hoped. Some people like the challenge. Anyway, she's making another one. She was able to get some bigger wood blocks. So the next one she's making will have, each block will be 4 inches, which will allow a bigger image. And we're going to boost the contrast and lighten the images a little bit to make it a bit easier. But that said, this is, because it's a wooden cube puzzle, there are 6 different images. Each facet or side of the cube corresponds with a different image. The one that we put together just as the program was starting is Bird Concert here. The other images all come from In Dubious Battle. So there are 5 panels from In Dubious Battle and then the Bird Concert. Those are the images on the puzzle.
So there's 6 different puzzles.
Uh-huh, 6 different puzzles.
Are they available in the gift shop?
They're not. Yeah.
Should be.
That's what, Debbie Ross Vassar was hoping they could be. The artist gave us permission to use the images for non-commercial use, for educational use. So if Debbie and the artist could have a conversation and change that, but right now we had permission to use it for educational purposes only. So the woman who made it told me, and some of you have probably done this before, but she said once you've made it once, there's a trick, and I haven't tried this yet, but the images, so once we've got one, presumably if we just turn it the same direction, we'll see if it works. You'll automatically get the next. See, this is what I start with, is
right in front of anybody.
probably never would have gotten. She keeps flipping it and gluing a new piece and then cutting it. That one's really hard to see.
Yeah, it is.
This is that archway you were all talking about that looked kind of like Zion or whatever. But that one would be hard. So then if we flip it again, right, we'll get a different one. It's going to be another dark one, it looks like, with a lion. But it's kind of nice to know that we can do the harder ones even if...
By getting an easy one first.
Exactly. But this is really dark. So I'm excited we're going to have a chance to have another one.
So which
made.
one is that? Oh, that's
This one is the dogs and the lions, and this is over there. Yeah. But the ones I've done that seem easier are the Bird Concert I've done a few times, and then there's one with the horse that's also easier because it's lighter. The white horse is a lighter image.
Maybe we flipped them. Oh, they're going to be all mixed up.
Does it work? I haven't. I don't know. I haven't played with it enough to know which direction it works.
You're gonna have to put it back together.
But the whole point of the puzzle is really to get people looking closer at the details. So the idea is, if you know what you're working on, you'll be looking back and forth. Oh, I see there's a lion. And getting people to really look at details, look at transitions. That was our hope with putting the puzzle in here, getting people concentrating on some of the details even more. And then, as you heard with the book that Grace has made, the point here is to really push the narrative aspect. So you can see this is the section down there with the peacock, and then the white dog down off to the lower right of the peacock. And so then there's some speech bubbles, and it says, what are these two talking about? So the idea is visitors could jump in, they could do a short back and forth, they could do a longer conversation, they could, one person could start the conversation, another one could continue it. We're hoping that people will really pick up on that, which is another thing that Shelley Reed wants to happen. She wants people to invent their own narratives. So that's pushing that a little bit.
And didn't you say the other day that you're going to have a blow-up? For people to
yes,
mixed
media.
So I did a line drawing of Bird Concert in which Shelley Reed gave us permission, and we will take one of the canvases that's in the background of the Children's Gallery and project this, obviously prime it and project it, and it will be a project for the mixed media in June, which is in celebration of In Dubious Battle. So another way in which the audience can put their own perspective into it. So yeah, and there are, if you want to see what it looks like, there are coloring sheets in the Children's Gallery right now of that line drawing. Yeah.
I can do that.
Does anyone have any questions for Bronwyn? Any of us before we head into School Arts Spectacular?
Does anybody know how long it took her to do all this?
No.
That's a good question. I don't
Adam
know.
might, but that's a good question.
Someone will ask that.
Carrie, did you do Greta Getzinger's program? Did you?
Yes, that's all filmed.
Because
So
these people weren't here yet, and that was such a great beginning to get us used to what somebody can do.
It is really worth it.
yeah, it was a wonderful program.
Sally,
Yeah, the links are posted on the volunteer website with all of the other
So it's
training
on there
videos.
already?
It's already up.
Oh, it's on the...
On the volunteer website with the rest of the training videos. Yep.
Okay, good.
I'll tell you the one I love. She shows a classic Venus,
The nude.
and then her drawing is of a nude moose in the same position with the Tetons behind and a bull off in the distance.
It was such a great way to start out this whole thing.
Well, I think because her art historical references are much more commonly known.
Yes.
So like
here. Yes. The Rubens and,
yeah, like the Botticelli Venus piece. The American Gothic.
American Gothic
Yes,
was
the
So
American.
hers are
done
these
that
are more
for several
obscure,
people.
but people pick
Yeah.
up on her. More
Yeah.
people are more likely to pick up on her art historical references.
Right.
But she's done a very, very similar thing, even though hers are much more humorous and comical and have color. Both artists have these parallels in that they're both inspired by things from art history, art historical images, and they're both changing them and giving them new context to be appreciated by today's audience, which is really fun to see how the similarities and they both work in murals.
Yes.
Greta does huge murals,
Huge
as
murals.
does Shelley Reed.
Yeah.
So I could ask you a question. You referred to this, or Bronwyn did, I guess, of being contemporary. I mean, as I look at it, it looks kind of traditional, but that's just because of the references I get, historical references. But why do you call it contemporary?
She is an artist still alive and working now,
She's just a young
and
person.
also I would say that her impetus for and her reason for creating these works is very contemporary.
Thinking about people, what Bronwyn said earlier about trying to get us to think about our animalistic nature versus our moral knowing wanting to do what's right for the environment and for the world and for the future, at odds with kind of this wilder instinct.
And she says she doesn't plan to be political, but can you see some Republicans and Democrats in here?
I know, I'm looking forward to hearing her explain some of these things, because to me there are a lot of unanswered questions that I would love to ask her about.
Wish she was coming before I have a tour.
Yeah. So we can start moving down to School Art Spectacular, which is in Wapiti Gallery, right across from the auditorium. And Grace can